Welcome to Far Out with Faust. I'm Faust Chicho, and today I'm joined by the lovely Yolanda Marie. A little bit about Yolanda. She is a channel and a spiritual counselor, and she's dedicated to bringing metaphysical information to humanity to help us elevate and ascend to our next level of consciousness and evolution. And I always like to give a little sample of the message before we get a chance to speak to the messenger. So I'm just going to read you something that came from Yolanda. She says, "We are moving beyond the power over others paradigm into a period of heart-centered living. You, in your power, are the force that calls together the world that you wish to create. Polarity, duality, fear, and judgment are false and create dissonance. Do not focus on that which you do not wish to create. Give yourself permission to be free and watch the pieces fall into place." Yolanda, thank you so much for being in. It's so great to have you on board.
I'm really happy to be here. You surprised me reading that.
Did I? In a good
Oh,
way?
good. Yeah, in a very, very good way.
Oh, great.
There's so much we can talk about, but that is arguably probably the most important thing we can talk about
It
today.
is. It is,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we're going to get into it, but let's get everyone more familiar with you first. A little bit about your background and how this story started for you. I'm so fascinated to know.
Does it ever start and stop? Would probably be the first thing. I mean, there's not really a start or a stop. There, let's just say, was a long moment or long moments where I would forget, that I was in some quirky, reality that didn't make sense, and I would just conform. But really, I think I've always been aware something was sort of off about the way typical lives are led, the way, the day-to-day goings on with people in general, not specifically one family or another, but in general, collectively. There was always something off, which really that's a strange thing to say because really nothing's off, nothing's wrong, right? We're all here to go through all of this, but some of us come here and we feel out of place. We feel like we're really here to do something a little bit different and we get pulled in a direction that's not, it doesn't feel like our direction. And that happened a few times with me.
Yeah.
And
I
there
mean,
was
it doesn't feel like when you say it doesn't feel like our direction, do you mean it doesn't feel like a direction that's acceptable to go in? Like, what do you mean by that?
well,
I mean,
often,
as far as society goes.
yeah. Well, I'll come back to the word conformity. There are rules about socially about how we're supposed to behave, what we're supposed to do to fit in. And the rules are based on an archaic means of judging our surroundings. They're based largely on survival. But we've really, without realizing it even, and again, this is the collective, okay? When I say we, it's just humanity. Just think of it like just all of us as one being, which we are. We'll probably get to that later. But really, we've moved far beyond that. But there are certain energies that are so heavy on the earth for thousands of years now that they have not allowed us to expand to our full potential. So that's really what has happened.
No,
You
I
know,
couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
My God, we would need a 3 hour block podcast just for that subject. My God,
Yeah,
we could dive into that rabbit hole. But yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
yeah,
And it's fascinating that so many humans are called to this work and this.
especially now.
Yeah, and it
Mhm.
always makes me wonder. I'm like, well, there was a lot less people on the planet, 4,000 years ago, 3,000. Like, I'm like, how? Like, people were called then, but I imagine there wasn't nearly as many. There wasn't nearly as many people.
Uh, yeah, that's one reason, and I'm kind of tapping in to get some answers for you there. Interesting how that works. It's like there are things that definitely want to come forward, but then me, I have to gauge how much time to take on that.
Yeah.
But basically, once this experience ball got rolling, let me just put it that way, certain things needed to play out. Okay, this is what I'm getting. Just certain things needed to play out. And then once they got to a certain point, and we'll go back and revisit some specifics about this. This can be explained a few different ways, but basically, once the energy got to a certain point where it was too polarized, so it's so dense here, but it's so light here. You have so much light pushing to try to get out and express itself and be what it is, but you have so much of the density, which is basically, if in terms of frequency, you would say that's low frequency. In terms of vibration, you would say that's very slow vibrating, like moving through sludge. Okay, just these are just visuals to help people to feel what's being said, because really communication is truly about feeling. It's about emotion. It's about understanding in your body what is meant. This language is very archaic. And that's not an insult to our language. That's just a stage in the progress of evolution. And so it's very limiting is a better word, actually, than archaic. And although both are true, but we just do not realize it yet. But the language limits us even across cultures, across continents, countries, even neighborhoods. And this is something that you understand, but it's very much more limiting than we realize. But so it became so polarized that, without getting into too much more detail, a lot of us humans, which we come back again and again, and not only to this planet, by the way, that could shock some people who maybe are newer to this sort of like finding out what's going on. But yeah, not even to the same planet, but a lot of us volunteered to come back, or to come for even the first time, which is very traumatic, to help to continue to raise, let's just say raise the frequency. But another way to think of that is tip the scale. Okay, tip the balance where the denser energy is forced to begin to expand, whether it likes it or not. Okay, and the expansion in itself is going to bring it toward light.
Yeah.
This is a misconception here too, because we think that darkness and evil, whatever we call evil and all of that, that's part of the polarity, right?
Right.
When we think of it that way, that it can actually, win something, or beat goodness, or beat God even, and all that. And that's not true. Everything always returns to light. There's no getting around it.
No, there's not. And having been raised Catholic, and we talked a little bit about this in our previous conversation, but it was always when you're a kid, you're naturally, maybe not naturally, but our society really ushers in this, you're enamored with these battles and these duels. They're literally duels. How can you get more dualistic and duality than an actual duel where one person is going to fight another person to the death? It's crazy. But as you grow and expand, and your perspective broadens, and you learn and start to learn more in a way that is not a leap of faith, the way that some religion can be a leap of faith. Not all aspects of religion, of course. We know that religion has its roots in a great many spiritual truths, but that's not so much the problem with religion, in my opinion. I just think that there's a primal force, a God who created everything, as and this is one thing that I think a lot of religions get right, as a mirror image, a reflection of itself. Then how could it have possibly ended up with except for that one person who's now leading the charge against its creator? I'm like, wait, if you believe that God is all powerful, then how could you jump to this notion that, except for when it comes to this one being, which we call the devil, that being is just as powerful as God. In fact, he's, leading the charge to make people bad. And I'm like, wait a minute,
Well,
doesn't
it's
make any
been so
sense.
programmed in. It's been so programmed in, pardon me.
Yeah.
Drinking some lemon water and the lemon water is not behaving right. But anyway, symbol, you can say it's a symbol, the being, the energy that people call the devil. And there are many different names for this across cultures, but it is a programmed thing, in order to actually advance a civilization or advance people, right? To give them something to fight against. Now, you might not have expected me to say that, but to give them something to give them friction, resistance, right? In order to build something in themselves. Now, the way that, and these are the Arcturians, and I know we haven't talked about the Arcturians much yet, but this is coming from the Arcturians, okay? And so, but these type of, what they're talking about here is largely an energy which has even programmed this. So the energy of oppression, the energy that would seek to keep people from expansion has pretty much usurped that tool, if that makes sense, because where we are now as humans is not there. We no longer need that friction, that thing to rail against in order to expand, okay? But at certain points in different civilizations, they chose coming in, and that includes us. All of us who've been here again and again and again through many lives, at a certain point, we agreed we're going to come down and experience this degree of duality, this degree of polarity. And so, this is what's no longer necessary. And what's happening with people today is that there's still, first of all, fear, but also programming. Okay. And one would argue the fear is also part of the programming.
Right. I would.
Well.
Yeah. I would argue that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a control mechanism. I think that, don't get me wrong. It's an energy, and it's part of life on this planet and many planets. I mean, but we literally have a North and South Pole. We have two poles on the planet, and we know that there are, we even know with our limited technology that there are other planets right in our solar system that also have this North and South Pole. That's what we call them. We know that there's a North and South Pole in our bodies. That the top is what we consider to be the
crown,
the north, the crown, and at the bottom is. But we know that because there's an opposition of charges on each side. That's how we can tell that there's a difference, right? Yeah. And that's for a reason. That's so that we have perspective, so that we have reference, right? And that's what is relationship.
And to provide experience, because without the moving, that and the perception of time are both just for the experience.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Otherwise, we would just be what we are, which is light.
Yeah.
Which is
that would be a different experience, right? I mean,
right.
It's fascinating to me to see, especially the time we're living in, with the level of fear that people have, and fear. I'm a big fan of Neil Donald Walsh. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Love Neil
He
Donald
wrote Conversations with God. If you haven't read the book, my God, it's hilarious. It's wonderful. It's not a religious book. Don't let the title put you off it. It's one of the most amazing dialogues you'll ever read in your life. It will change your life. It's called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. It changed my life. And I've read it, probably 6 times, and the rest of the books as well. But Neil always says that fear is false evidence appearing real. Because, in truth, if you understood what you are, your immortal soul, and this temporary stay that we're having, then you would know that there's nothing to be afraid of, because there's nothing that can hurt you. You can hurt your physical body, but in the last thing the only thing that can happen to you is that you cease to exist. So this notion of death that we have is so
not real.
It's not real, and it's so prevalent right now, and obviously you see the effect it has on a society. But if people had a spiritual understanding of what they are, then this level of fear would never be possible. You know.
And this is triggering that.
Yeah.
This level of animosity, tumultuousness, whatever this activity that's going on right now, this fear energy that's everywhere right now. It's triggering people to wake up to what's going on. And there was something that came in when you were talking about what Neil Donald Walsh said. Oh, so, and this is what's happening when you were talking about Neil Donald Walsh pointing out how people could only realize what they really are. And so now we're in baby step time. We're baby stepping back up to that by engaging it on a hybrid physical etheric level first. And by etheric, I mean the dimensions outside of yourself. Also, we are basically an energy field. It's really what we are. We're not in it, we are it, you know? And so as people start to discover that they can interact with that and don't need a middleman, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the baby stepping in the direction of owning power. And individual sovereign power is what is eating away at the fear energy. It won't survive. So, I mean, it's happening. It's happening. Everything looks horrible and very, very polarized right now. But what is happening is people are in their homes wondering what's going on. Even if they are not outing themselves at work, they are quietly contemplating what the hell's really going on here.
That's such music to my ears to hear you say, Yolanda. You know, it's you know, you know it on some level, but then it's hard when all you see is kind of the opposite. So I love hearing you.
Extremely difficult.
Say that, you know. But so, oh man, I had so many questions that I was going to jump to, but then they all vanished. You know,
come on with the questions.
Tell me. So, I don't want to skip over this part of your origin story, so to speak. You know, obviously your origin story is so much older than this incarnation, but you know, you are unique even among channelers. Like and I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. You know, growing up.
Okay.
You know, you're a woman of color. You're a powerful woman, and you know, I don't know. I don't know of another woman of color who channels. So it's
well, they might not be out like me.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. So, but that takes a lot of courage, you know, to do. And I just wanted you to talk a little about that because I think it's extraordinary.
Well, I definitely had to get pushed. And get pushed means by, let's call it a team, let's call it spirit guides, the essence of God. Although God, well, now we're going to get into this really quick. You can call God anything, you know, loving, anything loving. You can call God, well, anything. Actually, there's no judgment. And that's a misconception. It's not. So really, you know, masculine, feminine, God, goddess energy, which encompasses the energy that is the source of our creation. That's basically what it is. They're never really going to push one way or the other. So that, for whatever reason, wanted to be said right now, okay? It's interesting when something comes out of left field, it's usually an activation for somebody. So obviously I don't know who that was for, but yeah, there's not the judgment that we think there is. So now I'll just piggyback off of that and go back to your question then. So judgment, okay, sitting in the face of what, and in fear of what I knew would be an extraordinary amount of, I mean, the word judgment, may not really do it justice, you know. That was real. So I did have to get to a certain point. I had to get pushed to a certain point. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this on a lot of different levels, regardless of what the situation is. You know, this just happens to be mine, but this is what we tend to go through. And that's growth anyway. But this was an extraordinary, let's just call it an extreme case. Okay. And so, yeah. And then, but it wasn't just like, things happened and then I was channeling. Like, no, there are obviously phases of discovery, connecting the dots, putting pieces of a puzzle together. First, it began with, well, I need to know if something in my individual life is happening. I'm going to learn to use tarot cards, right? I'm going to just learn how to read these cards. Now, and this is something that in my family, I'm speaking about my immediate family growing up, okay? So mom, dad, sisters, all right. We were raised very, very, I don't want to say strict necessarily, but there was just an understood level of success that had to be attained, especially before we left the house, especially. Our family had to look a certain way or you got shipped off. I mean, seriously, and I say this with love. I love my family. I love my family. My father right now, in his 70s is awesome. He is awesome. And so this is something that takes a while as you begin to awaken to, number one, who you really are, all these different layers of yourself, and you maybe awaken to different truths about the world. That's all part of it. Mm-hmm. These are all little compartments of the same thing. We wake up to, first of all, I have the power to do what? And then we awaken to, what's going on in society? What is happening out there? What's happening with these forces that are seeking to keep us in this position? Many people don't realize that it's an active effort. There was an active effort. There still kind of is, but it's very, very weakened. It looks like it's very voracious right now, but it's very weakened, much more so than it looks like.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was still very, very active. And you start to realize that all of these things that you suspected, in my case, and this applies to many, the majority, okay? You do notice many things going on, but in an effort to conform, which seems like such a dirty word, we think that conformity is like major, like you really are like in a box and wearing a suit and a tie or whatever, and in a cubicle. No, conformity is simply just ignoring even the slightest impulse of who you are to please someone outside of yourself at any given time. At any time. And that even includes in the spiritual community, by the way. There's no community that has say over what you were supposed to be.
That's so well put.
You know?
It's so well put, and it's God, I'm so glad I asked you that. I'm so glad that you got to that statement, because it's so true, and people go about their lives and then they're depriving themselves of so much joy. And joy is God and God is love, and all these words are interchangeable, but
they're all us.
It is all us. And so it's so hard to,
it's so crazy.
The more you broaden your perspective, that works in both directions. We're talking about the scale and the polarity on the planet. Well, if you went from seeing just this much of your reality and what's happening in your reality, really intuiting and knowing, and all of a sudden it opens up to this much, that's a big difference. So now you're seeing all this beautiful joy and profundity, but you're also seeing all this, oh my God, can that be going on?
Yeah.
Tell me that's not been going on my whole life. And so people don't realize that if they stay like this, maybe it's more comfortable, and maybe people don't want to know because there's that level of fear. But this amount of joy and love and profundity and magic and synchronicity and miracles is so much worth even the frustration and the, oh my God, that comes with this level of, now I see what's happening, and everyone's going to call me crazy.
And so I want to take it there, since you're on that. Okay, so the blinders start here, widen. Okay, there might be a step even between that. Okay, so we've talked about this, Faust. So what happened with me, so that did happen. And with me, the blinders were like out, in, out, in. Okay, seriously. And I know I'm not the only one that's been through that. They're out, you know, everything. And then something happens in your life and you're like, I got to go back in. I got to go back in, whatever it is. I got to go back in and have this baby. I got to go back in and have this career. I've got to go, you know what I mean? To feed my family or support whatever. Okay. Or often, it is due to stress, a lot of stress and strain emotionally in a situation where you will not feel supported otherwise. Okay, these are the Arcturians. This is largely responsible for the coming out and understanding, and then the survival mechanism of coming back in. Okay, all right. So this is bringing me to, so I had what I'm going to refer to, okay, in this language that we use as a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. This was the beginning of there's no ever going back. It was just now things happen where it was still a little bit of a scale, and energy moves like that. We're always moving. We're never going to just be there's no perfect. There's no end game. And that's another thing to deprogram ourselves about. We are ever expanding and we're going to continue, which means when you get where you think you're going, guess what? You're going some more.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
if you didn't, you wouldn't be happy. You wouldn't, I mean, if you literally got to wherever you thought you were, you know, you arrived, you would get there and you would say, what else?
I'm bored.
What else? What else is there? I mean, I can't just stay here. Literally, I don't care who you are. You know, that's the nature of us.
Yeah. So when I had this spontaneous, because I cannot recall steps toward this, I wasn't trying for this. I didn't know what this was. In fact, I couldn't define it for a few years after that. So, but that's indeed what it was. And I could suddenly see everything in Technicolor. So these blinders they were at the time out a little, right? Well, they flew open, basically, okay? I was not yet in touch with galactic beings, which are basically, in many cases, you can think of them as the future versions of us. And that's I know what that sounds like, but that is the truth. That is where we are going. And also at the same time, they're also our family, as in we literally carry their DNA. Okay. And because they've been here.
Yeah.
For one, and also due to some experimentation, some hybrid things that have gone on, both nefarious and not nefarious.
Yeah.
Much of it was simply just creating new beings, creation, involved and very God-centered. So it's all over the spectrum. There's no like, it's good, it's bad, it's all over the place.
Right.
Which is such as life. Even within humanity, things are all over the place.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it's the same, you know, as above, so below. It's the micro to the macro. All right. And so the blinders did this. I could suddenly, without knowing any of what we just talked about, see all the human stuff, okay? Not the angels, I wasn't speaking to God, none of that. Not that I wasn't, you know, I grew up in church. I didn't get to that part about the strict family, you know, thing. But yeah, we definitely were brought up in church. But I had already disconnected quite a lot from that. So I was already aware. I already called what I viewed as God, source energy, the source of creation, universal energy. I was already understanding a lot of that. But when the blinders flew off, that's not what it was about. It is indirectly, obviously, everything is about that. But I was seeing other people as they were. So how this relates to what you were saying is, before, when I would, you know, come out a little bit, come out, going, all that, okay? I was seeing both sides, just like you were saying. On the one side, I was seeing this. On the other side, I was seeing that, you know, so the good and the bad. But when this happened, I was seeing everything through the eyes of love. So the good and the bad, that's the difference. That's actually the key, right? Not to sit in the observation, which collectively, that's what humanity is doing, but we're just beginning to peek out, you know, peek through the trees where we see the little sunlight behind the leaves, right? We're doing that. but I was seeing everything through the eyes of like love. I was seeing people as they were, even when they were, as my kid might say, acting like donkeys. Say that, but he did say, I shouldn't say admit that my kid says that,
Well,
but
better
yeah,
that than jackasses, you know.
he doesn't. He won't say that to me. But yeah, so regardless of behavior, that's the point. Regardless of whatever behavior was exhibited, I saw them as my brother, my sister, part of me, and it was so joyful. It felt so wonderful. Okay, but here's the caveat, right? So because I now could see all of that, it didn't see me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like they did not understand what I was going through, could not relate to me at all. There was no one I could talk to about it around me, you know?
Yeah, that could be a little
Yeah, I
traumatic,
didn't
you know.
have any outlet. I didn't know anything even, I mean, I think I knew about YouTube, but I didn't, you know, at the time I was getting a degree. I was about to begin getting a degree in psychology. I already had one degree in opera, actually.
Oh, wow.
Performance. Yeah, for a year. I sang since I was 13,
Oh,
classically
wow.
trained. Yeah, a family full of, you know, just
Yeah.
must be this. And you know, not that I didn't enjoy singing, but that's another story. But it was it was within the wrong frequency. So they want me to keep going with that. Okay, so this is a good, so it's not that I didn't enjoy what I was naturally good at doing and trained to do and all of that, but I was sitting in such denser energy that what I was really meant to do would never come into that. I was sitting in the wrong frequency bandwidth, if that makes sense. Okay, speaking purely with quantum energy right now. And so I could have done that. I could have kept doing that, but I never would have actually, they're saying eventually, it would have taken me much longer to break out of the programming.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I had an amazing man on the show a few weeks ago. His name's Ted Wallach, and he runs a men's circle with a lot of very affluent people who many have heard of. But it's all about listening, and you know, it's about this kind of, he doesn't like this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, for lack of a better one, detoxifying the male patriarchy and the masculine, and you know, some of
Yeah.
the some of the energy that has been going through, and you know, it's reflected in our society, obviously,
Yeah.
because let's be realistic, you know, it's the men that have been running these, you know, in charge of, for the most part, a lot of the governments and societies for the last couple thousand years. It wasn't always like that, but this incarnation of us, you know, is you can see the fruits of that labor everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Way to go, guys. But he has a great point that he makes about you know, that each individual person has a song to sing, and it's absolutely imperative that they sing it, that they find a way to sing it, you know, and that may be, you know, in their job right now, and it may not be, but it, you know, as long as they become aware of and figure out what that song is, you know, whatever it is. And when I say song, I'm being metaphorical. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't necessarily literally have to be a song,
Mhm.
but it very well could be, you know. And he works with a lot of people, encouraging them to look, you know, there is a song that only you can sing, only you, on the billions of people on this planet, and that you did come here to sing. So why not find out what it is? Because this is your go at this right now. You know, this is why you came. So what else are you doing?
And until you find out what it is, guess what? Be happy.
Yeah,
Give yourself permission to just experience joy in whatever you thought previously was frivolous and meant nothing,
yeah,
because it means everything.
it does, and that will lead you to whatever it is. And then look,
Yeah.
it may not be one thing. You know, I mean, like
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
it probably isn't one thing, because we are very complex, multidimensional beings, you know, with we literally have, you know, a foot and a piece of our DNA and everything, you know. So it's like this amazing galactic royal mix of
Big soup.
you know,
Big bowl
yeah,
of soup.
and that's what we are, and we don't even know it, of course. we're a young species. I tell my son, when once in a while he'll hear, if we're in a taxi and I have, the news is on,
Yeah.
or he has, he learned about the Holocaust. That was tough.
Oh yeah, that was tough for my son as well.
You know,
Very, both of them actually.
he was very
Yeah.
traumatized and upset, and
Yeah.
I caught him crying before he was going to sleep, and he couldn't, he had his little eyes closed, and I could see the tears coming out, and I asked him what's wrong, and he couldn't fathom how or why anybody could do that, and I just told him that human beings are a very young species. We're like a bunch of kids, and so we make a lot of mistakes. I said, but and that's not an excuse for what happened, but the good news is that there's no end to it. Everybody, no matter what happened to them, is going to get to live again, and in fact never stop living. Their bodies may not be here at that time, but they're living. They're still alive and well. Trust me. And he was comforted by that a little bit. But he always laughs when I remind him that human beings are they're like a bunch of kids. Because he understands that being a kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. It's hard for kids.
Well, and that's what's so important about being able to come into expansion, which is an odd way to say that, but because then we can remember enough and remember our power enough individually to not participate in something like that, to not, an entire group of people would not be at all easily swayed. And that's an understatement, to even participate. In fact, they wouldn't even be, again, it's back to frequency. It's really all about quantum energy. And that is what it comes down to. What we call science, this kind of 3D, very limited science that we have, is experiencing a lot of, or some progress, right, in trying to define these things a little bit and bring physical parameters to it, like give us something to physically see. But regardless, the more that people remember who they are and have access to this information directly, I mean, it's coming in. It's really coming in. And especially when you begin to have physicists, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Who are also interacting with other selves, with memories of past lives, with information downloads coming in. That just basically, I mean, that's artistry as well.
It is.
Often it's a download, it's an inspiration, there's a muse, there's something that leads you somewhere to help you discover what is you need to sing, or what you need to write, or which way to go. Well, it's the same with science. That's the point. It's the same with physical sciences and psychology as well. Okay.
Yeah, and even mathematics. I mean, at least
mathematics
in a young species evolution, I believe that there's the same type of discovery, and you need. It's like I look at our bumblebees. I look at our bees on our planet and how vital they are, and how I was eating an apple the other day and I was like, what is this new apple? It's called a sugar bee.
Oh.
And so my wife Googled it, because she's like, why don't you just Google these things? Why are you always guessing? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't think to Google it. She Googled it, and it said that that they discovered this apple, and that it's solely the product and the hybrid of bees doing what they do.
Wow.
The bees created a new species of apple. They couldn't even begin to design it. They had literally discovered it, and it's solely responsible was our beautiful bees, and it's like there's God so quickly. It's like you sometimes you just step back and look at nature, and you can understand how creation really works.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So,
but
what do you have for me?
Yeah. So, God, I could go into so many things based off just what we just said, but it's like, I don't know how many people are going to be called to hear this who are not, or at least will have been stayed with it this far, who, are really kind of stuck in that three-dimensional materialistic, viewpoint. I doubt many of them have made it this far, because it's just like, this
Unless they were
hurts their
activated.
ears. You know what I mean? And like,
Well, yeah, but unless they were activated and
yeah,
you get curious, there's
yeah,
no judgment, yeah. So if somebody is listening and they're like, I don't know about this, this lady who talks to, beings that we can't see, or beings from who did not
yeah.
originate from Earth, or a higher dimensional.
Yeah, I'm not gonna believe a word she says. She's out of her freaking mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's what they, that may be what they say. It reminds me of what we were talking about when I said I was in a heated conversation with a friend of a friend who is, was constantly trolling me. I finally was wise enough to
Oh,
just put up a boundary and block him, because he's just relentless.
yeah.
But, he accused a lot of wonderful, amazing human beings that I've come to know and respect, as to, basically accuse them all of being frauds. People like Dr. Joe Dispenza and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Bruce Lipton
Yeah.
and some of the most amazing enlightened minds of our time, and he's just convinced that they're basically glorified cult leaders. And I'm like,
But it's okay.
they're MDs, PhDs, doctors, scientists. Like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Like, how could you use those two things in the same sentence?
Well, but you can have that viewpoint if you came here to basically maybe trigger other people to wake up, to have this different experience, and never really evolve into, in the current lifetime, that is, into this new thing. Some people came here to never experience a full heart opening. I
Yeah.
mean, it's quite a feat
It,
to experience that, because you do have to release the judgment. It is non-negotiable. There are little baby steps to this judgment release, but it is inevitable. That is pretty much, now there's going to be some degree. Okay, there's a difference between judgment and discernment. So releasing the judgment doesn't mean you never, have any idea what's going on. You're never observing what's going on. Of course, being aware and discerning a situation in order to grow, stay safe, stay healthy, and understand where you fit in the world is important. That's discernment. But the judgment that's being spoken of right now is the right or wrong involving somebody else's experience, and allowing that to flow into your experience and affect you, and affect your frequency, affect your train of thought, affect your success, affect, anything. We're so super powerful. We can literally, just like you blocked someone virtually,
yeah.
we can block people energetically, and should constantly.
Yeah.
It's not an insult. It could just even be somebody that you really, really just, you love them.
Yeah.
But they're in a different spectrum. They're in a different, let's just call it, okay, a different place. They're in a different place in their life. And, whether you speak in this quantum universe language or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because we can feel, you can feel if somebody is somewhere that you're not. Let's not say above or below, right? Let's not put it there, but just somewhere that you're not, and they will take you off route. You can feel that. Mm-hmm. This is just a means of describing it in terms of literally how quantum particles move to create reality. Okay, so like you said, some people who may have stuck this far might be going, oh, yeah, I don't know what she's talking about now. Who does she think she is? She's not in the lab, but this is what is happening. Take it away. And honestly, if anyone has stuck around that's unsure, all they've got to do is just check in with themselves, because all of the information that's coming through me is easily accessed by anyone who's listening to come through them. Just set an intention. Go to sleep, let it be revealed to you. Is this true or not for you? Maybe it's not true for you, because maybe you didn't come here to experience that in this current life. That's fine.
But do you want to, is the question. Do you want to? Because if you want to, if you'd like to, then there's a path that will find you if you look for it, and the biggest thing I see is like, the thought that comes to mind, because I mean, it was it was a long time ago, but there was me sitting there thinking about, and hearing about heart opening experiences and being vulnerable and being able to be vulnerable in front of people. I am an actor, and that was very difficult for me to allow myself to be vulnerable in front of people. I
Okay.
wanted to,
Yeah.
desperately. I wanted to, with all my, with all my soul, I wanted to. And that's what led me down a spiritual path, because I was running into so many conditioned blocks, physically conditioned blocks that, of course, physiologically, we protect ourselves with these blocks, and we disassociate when we're young, when trauma happens. And thank God, I had an amazing, wonderful teacher who, told me that I have to do some soul searching if I'm going to find out why I built the, and I quote, Empire State Building over your emotional center. And I said, well, that's what I
Yeah,
want to
no.
do, and that's what I did. That's how I found this path, because I wanted to, and I knew something was wrong with me. I knew because the moment I would feel the slightest, opening in this area, it was
Yeah.
like Iron Man, the armor would just go, boom, like not a thought. I didn't have to think about it. It was just, when you're cut off from that,
Protection right
terrible.
away. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God that it all led me to where I needed to be, to where I am. But I know. Look, I know people who are, if they've made it this far, are thinking, yeah, well, what the hell am I gonna do? Well, I mean, like, if your intention is to open your heart, and you feel like you haven't succeeded in that yet,
Mhm.
then let that guide your day. Set the intention in the morning or when you go to sleep. And I'm telling you, the path will find you. You'll
You know
find.
what? And I'm going to chime in here and say, you know what? Even if you have no idea even what your intention would be, just be. This is the stage that we're at. We just are learning to be. Just be. Even if you're going to be saying, I don't agree with that, but feel joy. Like, feel joy. None of this other stuff matters. That's what we don't understand. All these details are just details. What I'm teaching, okay, it is a truth. It is a truth. But for the person receiving it to absorb it and understand it and agree perfectly with it is not necessarily something I need. If the person is in front of me, or on the other side of the camera, or whatever's happening, stumbles across me on YouTube, they're meant to absorb the information. But what's really going on with individuals, we talked about adulting earlier. Learn how to be happy in your skin, who you are, as you observe all the events that are happening around you, because the frequency is going to do the work. As you come into the joy, all of the stuff, which is true, everything you're saying, that is the absolute truth. This is a wonderful way to start the path. If the person doesn't get that, if they can't hear you, sit in the frequency of the joy, begin to bring the joy in. It raises the frequency. All of a sudden, they're able to hear what you're saying. Where 10 minutes ago, unlikely, right? More like 10 weeks ago, but perhaps 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, they just had the wall up, the block was up. Just find the joy where it is. It's the strangest thing. It's the strangest, because we judge that. Well, that's the wrong place to find joy. That's not supposed to be joyful. I was raised to think that was wrong. All of these judgments are running around, clouding. It's almost like clogging a pipe, clouding up your field. Just, it's all in there, weighing everything down. But you, the light, the very high frequency heart, wants to come out. Well, it's just being smothered, basically, by all of this judgment. So for whoever out there is like, I don't know why I'm here, I have no idea why I made it this far, I don't know why I'm listening, you'll hear this. Find that joy. Find the true joy, not the joy at somebody else's expense. That's not joy. But the true joy that what do you love to do? Is it that video game? Is it that reading that book? Is it sitting out on a boat? Is it ignoring everybody around you? Is it quitting your job? I'm not advocating for people to quit their jobs.
But maybe they should. Maybe they could. I mean,
this is true.
I don't think we're saying that there's anything wrong with it either. Some people need to pivot in order to find a freedom for happiness. And that's a whole nother ball game that
That's
we,
another,
right.
that's another topic too. Yeah.
I was at a meditation retreat last year, and it was the first day, and I'd been to many of these retreats. And I'm sitting next to this young lady, and she and I smiled at her, and she smiles at me, and I can see her, and she's kind of like doing this kind of turtle like shell movement,
Shy.
and
Okay.
I turned to her and I'm like, are you excited? And she said, I have no idea why I'm here. She said, I've never meditated.
Yeah.
I literally have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like, I'm starting to panic a little. Like I've never even meditated. I didn't do any of the preparation work. And I said, listen to me. I said, you are exactly where you need to be. You have brought yourself to the one and only place you can be right now. You've given yourself such a gift. I said, just sit back. It doesn't matter whether you are prepared. It's not a test. I said, just dive in and listen and throw yourself into everything that, he's asking you to do. You're going to
That's
have a
powerful.
remarkable experience. And by the
Yeah.
end of it, I remember we were having a conversation on the last day of this retreat, and I said something, and she said, and she said, I don't know. That's not exactly how you should be thinking about it. And I said, son of a bitch, you're right. You're right. I said, you are a fast learner. I'll tell you what, her whole thinking had changed, and this conversation we were having, she had the presence of mind to tell me, to adjust my perspective about it. I was amazed by that. And she's doing wonderful. And this, of
Oh,
course,
wow.
the retreat kind of blew her mind, and she's been practicing ever since. So it's just like, trust your inner guidance, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
foster that guidance, because it's
And
I
it's
have,
there. It's
yeah,
there. Some people will say it's not that I don't hear anything. There's nothing. I have no guidance except for what's outside of me. And it's like it's that little voice.
yeah,
And even if it's cussing, like that's what I'm saying. There's so much programming that we think it's supposed to sound a particular way. It is so interesting,
yeah,
you know, and not
yeah.
necessarily, it can
It's not
sound
like
like
Jiminy
it's
Cricket,
speaking.
It's not like it's not necessarily the voice of your conscience. It's
Okay.
like it's a knowing. It's not necessarily a voice. It could be a
Yeah.
feeling. It's just
Yeah.
something that you're compelled to do.
Yeah.
I observe this, in the biggest people who I think are struggling with like this material world we live in, and now science has become a new religion, and like everything is,
Yeah. This is true that now that you bring it up. Yeah.
and there's this great debate happening with, I don't know, fucking everything is up for debate, right? And people are like, well, how is that possible?
People are clinging to the two different poles, Faust. That's just
Yeah,
another symptom of that. We have to fight for we have to be opposite something and rail against it right now. We have to hang on to this old paradigm. It just feels too weird. It feels too
the
weird to like let
unknown.
it go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
But go
it's the
ahead.
great
Yeah.
unknown. You know.
It
Yeah.
is.
Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
What did you think you knew about this life? I mean, not in general this life, but about reincarnation. Did you did you believe that there was such a thing before you began doing
Yes.
this work? And how has channeling and opening yourself up to these messages changed your beliefs or your opinion on it?
I had an inkling, a claircognizant, like a knowing. In fact, I was very clairvoyant, claircognizant, but I didn't know quite how to define it when I was much younger, from a kid on. But I kept having these experiences that kind of were like, this could be a clue that, but yeah, so even though we were brought up in church, a Baptist Christian church, where, you're taught that you have to go through certain stages to get to God, and that God was very much like a human in terms of judging and all of those things, right? All the dogma. I just knew like I'd been here before, people were here before. Why were people asking a 12-year-old for, why were grown adults coming to me with their problems? That's instinctive. That is an energy, that's an energetic connection. And as a child, you think it's weird, but you're like, well, I guess and I would have answers.
Yeah.
And I would have answers though. See, that's the thing. But I didn't have, I couldn't put a definition to it. I couldn't define it, you know? I didn't have the language. I didn't have the experience. And I hadn't read the books, let's just say that yet either. And I was very closed off to all of that. But my mom, a very, very smart woman, she had snuck a lot of books into our library at home. She didn't say a word about them, you know? And I just started to read them. I was an avid reader, and I would just read stuff, you know what I mean? And I was just guided to read these wonderful things. And then one day my sister came home from college with a book called The Kabbalion.
Yeah.
Yes, I still have the book. I have the book. Actually, I think it's in Wisconsin right now. I'm looking at my other bookshelf here. But yeah. Okay, with the 7 Hermetic Principles, okay? And began to learn quite a lot about energy there and instantly understood it. When I say I instantly understood it, it was like, and no one around me understood. She thought it was like a book of the devil and was going to put it away. Yeah, like no joke. I'm not even exaggerating.
She's like, get that thing out of the house. Yeah.
Yeah, she thought it was satanic or something. And so I just stowed it away because I knew that that was actually the truth.
Yeah.
And, so another thing that let me know that there was definitely some other stuff going on is that I would wake up in paralysis quite a bit as a kid. Okay.
Yeah.
And on a couple of these occasions that I woke up and I was paralyzed, but I could see what was going on, but I was in my bed though. Okay. So I hadn't remembered anything. I could feel the house vibrating. Okay. I could feel, and it wasn't like if you're hitting wood or it wasn't the type of physical vibration. I don't know how to describe it to you. It was almost like the air around me was vibrating.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It was different. And I could hear, it was very loud in my ears, like wah, 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 like very, very loud. And I think I may have mentioned it to somebody once and it was like, nah, and I knew never to mention it again.
Yeah.
But so I had clearly been to some places, clearly, so that's another. So now, see, we're on a whole different train, but that just adds to the suspension of belief, right? Suspend the belief about the programming is what I mean. And allow yourself to imagine that there's something else going on after something like that happens.
Yeah.
And when I've just said that, there are going to be some people who go, is that what was happening? Because a lot of people don't even realize when they've been through something like that, that is what was happening.
It's true. And, there's a lot of things that happen in the physical body to the physical body that we experience that we don't realize is, of course, everything is energy, but what literally, like when you hear a song and it just, your whole body kind of like stops what it's doing and stands straight up, like you get goosebumps all over your body when this violin comes on in this one song, and it's, people don't realize that that's energy moving in your body, and your body is reacting to this. It's literally moved by what it's hearing and what it's sensing, and it's you can learn to tap into that and allow that and foster it and play with it. I just tell people all the time because sometimes people don't realize that something is also something else. So it's I just thought I would point it out.
It's a wonderful way to put that. That's such a wonderful way to put it.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you because, it was really instrumental in, in many of the stages that I see and kind of marked my growth and, this notion of a higher self. And, a lot of people hear the word and hear it tossed around and like, I don't know what the fuck a higher self is. Okay. And like, and I could just kind of like, I know some of the responses and, but you have an interesting experience because, and I believe this, goes for, everyone who is doing this kind of work, but, I just wanted you to speak about the higher self before I end.
Well, there's not just one higher self.
Right. Okay.
There are, we can talk about this for a whole nother 2 hours.
I know. Give me a quick version.
right now I'm integrated with 3 of my higher selves. But what
Okay.
is the higher self? You know what I mean? Higher proximity. It's really just um, an essence of yourself that is higher, that lives in a different dimension, operates, okay, flows within, whatever that means, because they aren't all living necessarily a life concurrently right now. Now, believe it or not, the higher self that was first integrated with me and is the strongest, which Archangel Michael doesn't even call me by my name, he calls me by hers. She's living another life concurrently right now, but we are yet still the same. That's called a fractal in a way, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another story too. So, but you would primarily call her a higher self because of the way that I came in. So I came into this life from her essence. So the difference between that and the fractal, let's go there, would be, and this has happened as well. Say I come from her essence. She's up. This is just for proximity, the whole like, linear or vertical thing. So she's up here and she's higher frequency, living this different, dimensionally different life, type sort of life, okay? Completely different being. But from her, let's say through time, I come down from her essence, through her essence, into other beings. So that actually splits into different beings. It's not one to one to one to one. It's the same as coming from God, because it is coming down from God. Or you could say even an oversoul if you don't start at God, but it is like a pyramid of sorts. It really is. Okay, lots of pyramids and lots of cycles. That's basically what, let's call it the experience, but really the existence is like. Our existence consists of this triangular situation,
Mm-hmm.
this circular situation at the same time. And then, of course, there is the Merkaba. There are the many, many ways to describe the infinite nature of the experiencing, okay, happening at the same time. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is all going to sound insane, but it's going to be very activational just to hear the words and then understand in your heart what I'm saying. And this isn't for you necessarily, Faust, but whoever's listening and doesn't quite understand. Okay, all of this is inside of you, and you are living other lives at the same time. They're actually concurrent. Okay, but this can also be experienced linearly. That's the power that we have. We can choose which way to experience this. So I have embodied, again, much of the essence of the higher self that I came from, one of them, okay? And in order to help raise the frequency here, all right, and that's just one stage. Now there's also other elements of myself that are integrated or I'm very connected to as well. Okay. And so that's a different, I mean,
Yeah,
if you really want people to be like, oh my God, then
no, that's
yeah.
I understand exactly what you mean. No, but
Yeah.
and I want to.
And people can be connected to angels too, by the way. I just wanted to get that out there because I know that's something that people may be more familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can definitely be very directly connected to angels, as in having perhaps even lived an angelic essence who has maybe perhaps been a guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
One of my sons has been a guardian angel. So that's something that most people wouldn't think. You think, well, I'm human, I'm going to come from other humans. No, you have been everything.
Right. We play every role, I mean, especially the role of guardian angel. I think that is like a prerequisite almost sometimes for,
Maybe.
becoming a human and having a body is like, wait a minute. First you're gonna learn what this has to go through before you commit and decide you want to do it. Let's just put you in this role, where you can see what you're going to be going through, and so look, I believe in my heart that we have more than one guide, that we have more than one guardian, and that the more aware we are of these angels, Neil Donald Walsh said, I have sent you nothing but angels. Even in the people who you see in your life, those are a form of angel too. It's not exactly what we're talking about, but everyone has that essence in you because everyone has, I think, played that role and been, a guardian of some sort in another place, in another time, or right now, since, we know that time is very experiential and illusionary or illusory. What's that word? Anyway, And what I wanted to tell people is like, you know, everyone's always trying to connect with their higher selves, right? And what I learned is that first connect with the earth. First clear
Yeah.
out the lower chakras and make sure that this trauma that gets stuck in here from all the shit that happens to us in our life, excuse my language. Maybe I hope you weren't gonna have your kids listen to it, but
Oh, no, they're fine. Somebody's
um,
probably on a little trampoline right now. They were
it,
supposed to be doing work.
you know, it gets stuck in these first couple energy centers here. And, you know, you struggle and you're trying to reach up and out, but you keep losing your footing because you have no roots. And so what I
Yeah.
learned through experience is that you have to continue to clear these lower centers, and
Oh, yeah.
that
It's
is
ongoing.
yeah, and that's the way up and
People think
out.
I'm going to be done with this. And then it's like something else comes up and something else comes up.
Yeah,
This is a journey.
it is. It is. It's an everyday
Yeah.
process of integration and healing, you know,
Yeah.
and look, there was a point in my life when I was really virtually unaware of you know, I mean, I knew that there was trauma, but I had no idea, you know,
Okay.
where it was, what it was. I was really clueless. I was, you know, they say, well, like, well, you always know. I mean, I guess that's true on one hand, but something can be very, very buried in the subconscious, and so that it's so
Yeah.
far from the conscious that you may not know, and you may not be able to readily access it. You may have to do some digging.
And we've all plotted certain points too. And that's largely unknown, I think, at least in, like, say, the Western culture, in some cultures, I'm sure it's very known, but what we
Yeah.
call civilization, right? Whatever that means. It's largely unknown that we actually come through here. We want to give the responsibility to another being outside of ourselves and all that. But no, we do this on purpose. It's unbelievable, but we do this on purpose. And so there are certain points at which we are meant to, and it's like an area of life. It's not necessarily like a day or a time, but we have certain little check-ins and certain points at which this is an opportunity to discover this, or this is an opportunity. I mean, can it shift? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, of course, if we are very aware of this, we can like begin to shift certain things and bring it all in. In fact, that's what I did. I wasn't supposed to wake up for probably another 20 years. Well, now, and when I say wake up, like completely, like the
Yeah.
whole thing where the Arcturians are teaching me how to channel and all of that, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But I was 20 years early. We really came
But you
to,
were right on time though.
right. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and because I was early, I threw off other
Yeah.
people's plans, yeah, it was very not to make light of it, but it did end up being quite a bit traumatic,
Oh, I bet.
maybe
Yeah.
more so than if, yeah.
I mean,
So
but it, we talked a little bit about that earlier, I think, when you mentioned how traumatic it could be to have this awareness and come into this energy and then end up facing the world, which is
yeah,
so,
that's a mess. I
yeah.
mean, it can be. I don't want to scare anybody. It does not have to be a mess, but it can be. But you know what? You come through it.
Hmm.
I would never not repeat that. I would definitely do that again,
Yeah.
hands down. I would not choose to stay unaware. I would choose to see everybody in Technicolor. It was definitely worth it. I guess
Hmm.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but was it a mess? Yeah. Lots of stuff in life is a mess.
Oh my God. I
And you
mean,
don't even realize the mess it is until that happens. That's the funny thing, Faust. It's like you don't really know the mess that you're in until you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh,
you have,
that was a hot mess.
sometimes you have no idea what a mess, you know, and in the darkest times, you know, when you're walking around with your head down and your heart broke and, you know, it's hard to imagine what you think needs to show up in your life that's going to make you happy. And it turns out,
Yeah.
and it's so cliche, but it's so true. It turns out that what needs to show up is you.
Yeah.
And that love that you think that you've been deprived is needs to be turned on yourself, you know, because you feel ready to give
At
it, but you
100%.
feel that you aren't getting it, you know. And that's the
Yeah,
most.
100%, because everything on the outside of us is merely a reflection,
Hmm.
no matter what. It's another very difficult thing to
Hmm.
come to terms with. It is extremely difficult. I'm including myself. It's not an easy thing to really like. It's like a practice. It's like you have to constantly remind yourself that is a reflection of me. Now, that's not necessarily literal, but it's an energetic response to what you have previously already created and are also somewhere in your field, if not immediate, somewhere in your field, this field of
Yeah.
energy. You're being it now.
Yeah.
There's something that needs to heal now. Something needs to be let go now. Something needs to be not judged about yourself now, right now, in this moment, or it wouldn't be appearing to you.
Yeah. And you know,
As this
for
annoying little lady who channels. I'm just kidding.
and 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 yeah. But what you're saying, before I forget what I was gonna say, it's, it's funny, things happen to us and we're like, God, why does it always happen to me? And
Yeah.
I hear people say that, and I
Faust, I gotta
thankfully I
tell
don't
you what
say
the
that
Arctur-
anymore, because
I
I
gotta tell you what the Arcturians were telling me to tell you though, before I
tell me.
forget, like when you were talking earlier, they were saying, have think bigger, because your audience is more ready for this than you realize, despite what is
Yeah.
called like a troller. There, I'm all lit up,
Yeah.
and that is always a sign. Now, for those who don't understand what I mean by that, I can feel things in my body. Many people are clairsentient and don't realize it. Faust, don't forget what you were talking about. I didn't really want to cut you off, but I
No
wanted them to
worries.
be able to say it. Yeah, but don't forget what you were
I'll
saying.
try.
Write it down. So, but in my field, through my field, and then engaging with my physical body are little like pinpoints. It's like electricity, and it's in my solar plexus and my heart area primarily. Okay. But this doesn't mean if you're out there and you're clairsentient, like you talked about earlier, Faust, if you're engaging more of the lower chakras, you will get activations there first a lot. You will feel things there as well. It's not wrong. There's no right or wrong. There isn't. It's just balance, just bringing it into balance. And it will help highlight the trauma. So do pay attention to what you are feeling in the lower chakras, in the higher chakras. And by that, let's talk about the navel. Let's talk about the root at the base of your spine. Okay. Let's talk about your throat. Things like this. This is merely a way to organize energy into a vortex in which to communicate with the parts of yourself outside of yourself and universal energy, that you can communicate it into the physical. So it's like a bridge. Okay. This is coming through now. All right. So this is one way that you can interpret this. This will come through in physical science. In other words, in the science that people trust. Now, this is another thing that's leaving us. The principles of familiarity, similarity, authority, all of these things that we must first trust based on the last 500 years or whatever. And all of the research, well, as people are finding out that the research has been tainted, the systems have been bought, all of these things, they're now waking up to realize, I have to engage this myself. I need another way to find out truth. This is what I'm saying right now, and what's being said through me. And you don't have to call them the Arcturians. Believe me, they don't care. But the higher essence of information that's coming through me, the energetic information that's coming through, is a truth. See where it engages in your body. Because whatever these words I'm saying may translate a different way through to you. Trust yourself when you hear this. Whatever comes into your mind when I'm saying what I'm saying, what you're saying to yourself is the truth, okay? Just reorganize it to fit your belief system, as crazy as that sounds. Well, Miss Yolanda, I'm trying to get out of this belief system. You said this belief system was wrong. Well, but you got to baby step out of it.
Yeah.
If you try to go from 1 to 10, 0 to 10, there's going to be the doubt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a paradigm shift that most people aren't ready for, and that doesn't happen unless there's some kind of pretty awful tragedy that, that creates this paradigm shift, or, it's usually we have to work within the confines of our consciousness and subconsciousness. So, you're not going to win anybody over who doesn't believe in these things, but you can get them thinking about it. You can plant seeds. I believe that if there is fertile ground, then
Well,
seeds will be planted.
they're not coming through if nobody's listening.
That's
so
right.
That's why I always know if I start to get lit up and they're all here, like it's all happening. So if it's one person, that's enough.
Yeah, it's true. Because that one person has an effect on everyone in their life.
That's right. There's this web of consciousness. We are all connected.
Yeah.
Within this web of consciousness. And again, it's
not
another
a small
non-negotiable thing.
Yeah. People don't realize, they hear that and they're like, yeah, I'm going to affect everyone in my... No, you're really going to affect everyone in your life. Everyone. There's not going to be anyone who's unaffected in some way. Whether you see it or not that doesn't make any difference, but there is an effect. I've experienced it, and I've seen it, in my life, and it's usually a beautiful thing. It's it's amazing.
Like that, like in the meditation retreat with the wonderful young lady who, that's like the perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So I'm excited to hear your response to this question, and it's one of my favorite questions to ask. So what I want to know is if you had the ability to speak to the human race, I always have this imagination, this notion that if you could whisper into the ears of everyone who goes to sleep one night and make a suggestion for them to wake up to, and maybe they're not even conscious that they got the suggestion, but if you could plant a seed, a mantra.
If you be completely who you are in this moment, period, the end.
Be completely who you are.
Be completely who you are. That is the way to access the totality of your power at any given time. The restraints of the conformity outside of yourself based on the rules of society are what is limiting your power. Okay, do we have to operate within these rules? Well, yeah, to an extent, but this is a mental game. Okay, you can connect your heart with your mind and all of that's going to bridge, but until you get there, right now, for you, it may be a mental game of just knowing who you are at all times.
Yeah.
Okay. Be who you are. That's how you're going to access all this power. It's very, very scary. It's a lot scarier than people want to admit, because you risk being ostracized. You might get thrown off of the island. Your village might put you out. We're very still, that is the old reptilian brain, still active, where we need to cling to each other in terms of that territorial, it's our village over here, your village is over here, your village is over there. We have these rules and we just continue to operate within that, and we trust each other. So this isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just that you're ready to evolve out of that. And the reason for all of the upset and the cognitive dissonance that's happening right now on the planet, and that includes what's going on with all of the fear energy because of what's happening, mask, no mask, and all of that. Okay. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but just all of the stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
It's really a reaction to not being able to go to this next stage that you're ready to go to. Okay. So be completely who you are in any given moment. It seems like a broad thing, but it's really not. Because if you really think about from situation to situation, we'll put it that way, instead of moment to moment, think situation to situation. If you analyze that every time, you probably are going to be making different decisions than you typically make. Okay. It's not a super duper easy thing to do necessarily. Yeah. But your tribe will meet you where you are at some point. That's an important thing to know. A lot of people wake up and they really do find themselves off the island. Okay. The worst fear, but they're holding a lot of judgment, resentment, even hate, all these emotions toward this other tribe. And they haven't let it go yet. When you really let it go,
Oh
And the
yeah.
judgments, you let the judgments on yourself go about what this is supposed to look like. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Let all that stuff go and do you. Once you do that, your tribe is like, wow, I freaking love this person. What
And
have they done?
they're waiting for you to do that. They're waiting for you and they don't even know it.
They don't even know it.
This is my experience anyway, and they will accumulate in mass for you if
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
the courage to go in into the unknown. I mean, it feels scary because it's unknown. How am I gonna, if I leave this job, how am I gonna? But if you know that you're supposed to, then you must trust that something will present itself, and it will. It absolutely will. It's always been my experience that, it can be scary. It can absolutely be scary, especially when the stakes are higher. And it's easier for some people to say, yeah, I'm going to do this. And others who are in a situation where like, I cannot do that. I have people depending on me and I can't take a chance and do that. Well, but that's a choice. That's a choice that as long as you're aware of it.
Yeah, and I would suggest to everybody, but especially those people that they understand, like what you're saying, it makes perfect sense. Like they understand and they see it, but they're like, but I don't know what to do. I have to take care. I mean, that's
Yeah.
probably very, very common, in fact.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, we would say, I'm trying not to channel directly in case they're definitely coming through, but they would definitely say, work on releasing the judgment first, because that is pretty much the window into dropping a lot of the other stuff. It's like the gateway negative emotion.
Yeah.
If you can think of it that way. Really just do what you're doing. Baby step out of your job, go to meditation retreats, sound awesome, like things like this. It's something you can do while you're still having to navigate maybe some heavier energy, and then you're dropping the judgments, you're dropping lower frequency emotions from your field is the way that I would say that. That's the way I would verbalize that. Okay. But you can say that many ways. Just say releasing the pain, releasing the trauma from your subconscious, things you didn't know were there, learning how to come to 0 point. You are everything and nothing at the same time. Okay. See yourself from that perspective. You get there. Once you get there, here's the funny thing. While you're on the way there, dropping all of that stuff, little things are happening in your life, little by little, to make it much easier for you to step out of that job, step out of that.
And you may not even, chances are you're not even aware of it, but trust that they are, because they are.
You just wake up one day and you'll be like, how in the world did this get easy?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always an opportunity to recontextualize, right? It's one of my favorite words. What's happening to you is always for your greatest and highest good. You may not be able to see that or believe it, but that's the way things work. And when you begin to understand that, you'll start to experience it. That is assured. That is a guarantee. But until you do, you're going to experience the other thing. That's how powerful we are as creators. And that's how amazing this universe is to give you exactly what you want, what you believe you're entitled to and do, in your heart, not just in your mind, but in your heart. And, I tell people this all the time, but we go back to that word sovereignty and responsibility. And that's, I think that's the biggest thing that our species is struggling with right now.
I think I told you this before. Your responsibility is a tough one. Especially when you realize you really are, because you can feel on your own when you just step away from all of that stuff. And then the responsibility feels like something different, but it's good different. And it becomes good fast. At first it's scary, but it's definitely a responsibility.
It, like everything else, the second nature of it, what you have to make something conscious before it can become subconscious programming again. So, there's a time where you have to be a little more diligent. But then once you get the programming straight, then you're just operating. There's no more debugging that goes on. So if you think about it that way, it's very much
I
like a
like how you put,
software
yeah, I'm
program.
thinking about how you put that now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an easy way to think about it since we're so
Yeah.
computer oriented.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
But
I'm gonna have to catalog that.
yeah, go for it. What's
All
mine,
right.
I always tell everyone there's nothing that's really mine. It all comes from someplace. And this notion that we have as humans where, well, I invented that. No, you didn't, dude. No, you really didn't invent it. I know you want to make a lot of money off it. That's what we do. But the truth is, it was invented. The thought was here. You tuned into it, and you made it happen, maybe. But and I, I just know that there's a lot of highly enlightened societies where they don't they don't do stuff like that. When something is invented, it's for the good of all. It's not so that one corporation or one family can reap all the profits while the worker bees slave over it. And it's just so crazy the way we live.
Part of that, with like say fifth, sixth, seventh dimensional Arcturians now, so they still have something like a physical body.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how we are on time. I'll try to make this really quick, but yeah, so they come in. We were talking about be who you are in any moment. So yeah, an Arcturian youngling or child or whatever you want to call a young one is allowed to do that. And I'm sure that goes for many, many, many races of beings. I'm just using that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And so they much sooner know what they want to do in terms of contributing to their society, and they're doing that. And there are others doing that with them, and everyone respects everybody, but there isn't this hierarchy in the same way. There are councils, that's something
Mm-hmm.
different,
Yeah.
okay, of wisdom. But there isn't this hierarchy where someone, like you said, takes the credit, or someone is controlling. I mean, what's
Yeah.
money to them? That's not even a thing that exists. But
I
it
know.
isn't. Yeah, there is no need. There's no
No.
need. I mean, the Ubuntu's have it right. This
Yeah.
this operation, the way that they have operated, but yeah, so there's no need for any of that. Not even barter and trade. They just create what they create when they need to create it, constantly innovating, and that's where they're at. We will be there.
Yeah, we'll get
We're
there.
going.
In
Yeah.
this iteration or the next, we'll get there. I'm confident. One way or the other, we're on our way. But Yolanda, this has been amazing. I'm so glad that for people who have made it this far, Yolanda and I tried to do this last week, and we both had some camera difficulties, and it wasn't meant to be, and we ended up recording something, and we ended up having a great conversation, but we decided
We
to
have
do it
what I'm going to
again.
call energetic disturbance, and I know
Yeah,
that's what you're
there
trying
was a
to
lot of it going. I
say.
mean, my camera got fuzzy, and my camera
For
has
no
never
reason.
gotten fuzzy, which was crazy.
It was
Very,
insane.
yeah, very electrical stuff happening. But thank you so much for coming on, Yolanda. Thank you for sharing your story and your
Welcome.
wisdom. And I'm so happy we did it again because I
Yeah.
feel like we covered everything that we were going to and more. And this is a much cleaner and crisper video.
Yes,
So
except to say I want to, and I said this last time, but I want to say it again. What you're doing is awesome. And I
thank you
know I
so
said
much.
this before, but you look like my next door neighbor. You look like everybody's grocery store. I'm seeing you down the street. I'm not going to use the word ordinary because that's not really what I mean, but a citizen, like an average citizen. You're not wearing a tin hat. You know what I'm saying? All of
Yeah.
these fantasies that people have and I feel like it's awesome to have, someone who looks like you with that knowledge, because then you make it really possible. You plant the idea and make it plausible, basically, to at least entertain the idea that there's something going on that we did not learn in a typical school.
Yeah.
Okay, that is worth investigating. So that is very, very important.
Yeah.
And I know you would say something probably similar about me too, because we talked about how African
Absolutely.
Americans, as of yet, they are out there. They don't channel maybe the same way that I do,
Hmm.
but they may channel through readings, cards, you know. But yeah,
Yeah.
it can't be contained anymore, I don't think.
No, it can't
People
be.
are learning their power.
And that's why these conversations I think are great to have because you're going to resonate with people who I may not be able to at this time and vice versa. And that's a beautiful thing. And if the end game, if there is such a thing, is the realization of love And
Yeah.
because that's what that's what we've been created out of. And that may sound woo to a lot of people, but I don't really care. I mean, I believe that it's
We can
all,
make it even more concrete and say, if you want to go, this is what gets us to the next stage. People
yeah,
think it's muscle and competition. No, that's where we were.
right.
Love is actually the power source. That's the generator. That's the tool right there, this heart engine.
Hmm.
Bridging the heart with the mind.
So
I mentioned it
powerful.
earlier, but yeah, that
Yeah.
gets us to this advancement that we so want. We
Yep.
so want to be advanced, but we don't want to bring our emotional body and our, heart to that. We don't want to rise to the occasion necessarily. Well, we do on higher levels.
We do. We just have a lot
Yeah.
of hurt and trauma that keeps us
Yeah.
from just saying, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna do it. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I'm gonna risk getting hurt
Yeah.
because it's the only way I'm gonna heal anyway." So,
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, absolutely.
but well, hopefully, everyone who stayed with us this long enjoyed it, and thank you again, Yolanda. It's been
Thank you
great.
for having me, Faust.
I'll keep you posted on when we're going to have the premiere and everything, and we'll be in touch for sure.
All right.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. I appreciate it.
So very welcome.
Bye.
All right. Namaste, my friend.
Thank you. Same to you. Namaste.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.